Welcome back. I'm here with Katie again, and we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into the manufacturing digitization with electronic batch records or device history records, travelers, those manufacturing areas of data collection where we're looking to pull all of that information in to be able to use it for quality control, quality event management, as well as tracking and trending, and really focus on improving that manufacturing environment. And how are we going to start that digital journey and understand really the best way to get past those hurdles and those elements that may be slowing us down, whether they're resource capacities or other elements, as well as we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of bringing that digitization directly to your device history records and your batch records, and really focus on the use of that information moving forward and the benefit it brings to your manufacturing process as far as speed and as far as quality.
That's right. And this is a great topic because there's so many benefits to discuss.
Yes.
And when we start working with customers who are beginning the journey of going to an electronic system, a lot of times they're really focused on one or maybe just a few benefits that they're really looking for, like access to their data or increasing the release time of the product. But there are other things that as they move forward, they start to realize that there are all these other advantages they didn't think of. I just talked to a customer a few weeks ago, and he was telling me that with the electronic system, when they have a new employee begin, that employee is able to begin running on the line with less mistakes because the digital system has controls in it that doesn't allow for that. I had another customer tell me how glad they were to have implemented the system before COVID, so they had the opportunity to work remotely, which is something we've discussed in this series. So a lot of benefits that we'll cover as well, which is very exciting.
Yes.
So my name is Katie, and I am currently a product manager at MasterControl. I worked in a variety of industries before coming to MasterControl about 5 years ago, and I've spent most of my time working on the manufacturing solution. I work with our customers to understand their problems and processes, and also directly with the engineering teams who are working on developing the MasterControl product.
Awesome, and I can tell you're excited about this one.
I'm excited.
I can tell it's resonating fully. And again, I'm Terrance Holbrook, Principal Director of Product here at MasterControl. And a little bit deeper on my background here, I've actually taken 4 or 5 companies to a digital batch record or DHR in homegrown systems. Those customized, super expensive, hard to maintain and hard to adapt systems. And so I'm excited as well. This is a fun area for us to talk about because, again, it's perceived as being difficult, and when really it's not. But really the most difficult part of any journey, right, being philosophical here, is the first step. And so how do we actually get beyond that, we just don't have time, or we can't, dedicate resources to it, or what do we do, or I've heard they're expensive. How do we take that first step and really begin the journey?
That's right. And in terms of starting the journey, one thing that we mention is it's really important to know the priorities of your stakeholders and get them on board with the process. So first step is to understand who are the stakeholders. A lot of times we think of those that are pushing the project initially, maybe an executive, but really there's lots of people that are going to be involved, from executives, management, those operators on the manufacturing floor, QC, R&D. Really make sure that they understand their involvement and that they know the benefit for them so that they are willing to put in the initial effort.
Oh man, end-to-end quality. Something about that culture of quality that I keep talking about, right? This is the batch record in the DHR, pretty much spans the whole company, all the way through shipping, right? Even if you have to send something in a climatized shipping container, it doesn't end there. And if you're talking about large medical devices that span 20, 30-year lifespans, it can just keep going.
Absolutely. Jumping into design best practices and thinking about how does one take a paper record, which could be many, many pages, and put that into a digital system. This is an opportunity similar to the topic we discussed recently in SOPs and work instructions to really take the time to understand the process, take a step back and understand why was it set up this way initially. When we've worked, I know you've been in conversations like this where we've been working with customers through the implementation. Something seems a little bit funny in their paper record, and we ask them, why is it set up this way? And it turns out it's just because that's the way it's always been.
Yes. Now, one of my favorite is when manufacturing says, but we don't do it that way anyway.
Right. So yeah, this is a unique opportunity to get the right people involved and ask these questions, because a lot of times these opportunities really don't come otherwise. To get everybody in the room, understand how you want to put this together in a logical way that really makes sense.
Yep.
So it's important to really consider the entire flow, who is involved at which point. Additionally, when talking about a digital system, there are some things to take into consideration digitally that's not available on paper. So these can be things like training. For example, in the MasterControl system, you can have training that is applied to a specific section. So you might want to think about who is working on this section, what should they be trained on, how do I want to set that up appropriately. The other concept that comes up quite a bit throughout the implementation and setup of the initial master batch record are dependencies. So you can configure that a certain group of steps needs to complete before another can begin. So maybe material staging needs to complete before mixing can begin. All of this is configurable and might make you think about a different way to set up the record that's going to make sense so that you can take advantage of some of these new features that are available to you.
Well, and we've talked in the past about continuous validation. Validation is really a state of mind, right? It's not a single point in time. And the nice thing about a configurable system, if the system itself is in a continuous validation state, it makes those adaptations and changes. Even if you go in later and alter your process, it's in a continually validated state, right? And so having that ability to have the configuration mixed with the validation is a key component to being able to go digital.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I would also add there's additional features outside of just training and dependencies, many of them that are available in a digital system. So some other things to think about, verifications and witness can be assigned to any step in the process at any point. You can actually do things like assign a specific person or group of people to a step. So instead of worrying about setting things up so only the correct people sign off on things or enter data into sections, these are things that you can control now automatically. We can also have values from one location being displayed in another. In calculations, for example, you can now have a calculation value just automatically show up in a calculation as configured. So all of these things are going to result in a different way of thinking about setting up your record.
So you don't have to have somebody come by every single person and verify every single activity they do if they don't know how to write numbers or add or subtract anymore.
That's exactly right.
That's the benefits.
That's exactly right. Yep. Oh. Another one that people love is the concept of a table or an iterative group of steps. So instead of, if you have a process, you don't necessarily know how many times it's going to take place. In the paper world, that often looks like a big table with a bunch of rows, and then what's not needed is NA'd. That's the kind of thing that you don't need anymore in a digital system. You can configure it once and repeat it as many times as needed.
Yeah, stay away from paper on glass. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Common theme, exactly. So the last bullet on here is to be open to feedback from manufacturing, but really feedback from anyone who's involved in the process, and know that this is not a one and done, create the record, throw it out to whoever's executing on it and you're done. You're going to see the most success if you're open to the exchange of ideas and you want to encourage the feedback from the end users and the consumers of the product and make sure that you're optimizing it for their needs as well.
Well, and change control in a digital world is a huge benefit all in its own. In a world of digitization, a manufacturer can say, hey, this is not exactly how this step is done. They can submit a request, say, hey, we need this changed, can go through change control. We're no longer having stacks of documents laying around with different changes at different points in time. So it all becomes live time information flow directly at the operators, which is where we want the information, right?
Exactly. So some of the benefits of going digital, we could probably talk about this for hours.
Yes.
But we will keep it short and sweet. So the first points on there are increased efficiency and less mistakes. So there are many different ways that we can look at how a digital system can result in less errors. We have things like conditional paths that can be configured. So based on a certain entry, you may or may not need to do certain steps, and those can be configured to automatically NA, so really reducing the room for error in those type of situations. We have things like numeric limits where you can put targets around numbers and configure certain things to happen based on an entry. So if someone's entering pH, for example, why would we want to allow them to enter more than 14 if we know that would be a mistake? Notifications can be configured when steps and sections are complete. We talked a little bit about calculations. Calculations can be automated, happen automatically in the system. You can configure rounding and precision. You can put formatting around text. So really there's so many different elements and configurations that are available in a digital system that's going to limit the room for error at all.
Well, it's funny because I worked with a company specifically. They had a manufacturing line, and their goal was to replace the humans, right? And I think there's a balance here, right? There's a balance of using equipment and automation and automating the human actions, right? Taking over that intelligence is extremely hard. You talk about the errors, for example. Human errors existed. They wanted to remove them, not only for the quality and efficacy of the product, but to improve their speed of their manufacturing. So they took and implemented a bunch of robots. And then the error shifted to the programmers of the robots instead of the operators of the line, right? So you're always going to be chasing a human error. So ideally, one of the greatest benefits to a digital system that is human-focused through automation is the ability to take that and control it, right? So now we're focusing on where the issues come from and putting controls around that to help them, right? Because we don't, I never make mistakes, right? We talked about that. So, everybody makes mistakes, and having a system that can help assist them to not make those mistakes is one of the greatest benefits we have.
Absolutely. So another element is data integrity, and as soon as a user logs into the system, they'll have a Part 11 compliant signature, and every action that they take, every data entry is time-stamped with full traceability and auditability of what they're doing. And this is happening automatically in the system. We also have the ability to correct things real time. As soon as there's an issue, that can be, someone can be made aware of that and make the necessary changes immediately. So all of those are very valuable. And we also talk a lot about connectivity and the different systems and the data flow that's coming in and out of these master batch records. So there's so many different elements that are involved in that, from QEM data, such as deviations that might be involved in the process, training that needs to happen for those that are working on the product, equipment calibration information. What if you could prevent an operator from using a piece of equipment that's out of calibration? Those types of things are available. And when we talk about data exchange, people often think of ERPs and material information. That is a great benefit that we've seen our customers utilize as well. So whether it's having an ERP launch a record from a customer work order, or validating material information, or updating the ERP with the amount of materials that are consumed, all of these things that you can do to eliminate the dual entry is going to help with data integrity and efficiency.
Right. And in a cloud-based world, in this digital world, it's a lot less expensive than it used to be to hard code those connections with all the headaches of the upgrades, right? iPaaS systems of today allow for each system to upgrade independently, and the iPaaS handles kind of as, I think of it as a switchboard or an electronic circuit board, right? And so, this connecting systems, again, breaking down those silos, really building that culture of quality throughout. I don't know if I told this story before, but, as I went to a very automated manufacturer boasting that they were paperless. And you walk in their plant, and the first thing you see are clipboards, right, as somebody's walking around taking measurements on paper. And it's as simple as swapping that out for an iPad with the information flowing into the system. And now we gain something that we've never had before. We have that quality control information going right back into the process, not after the process, not after somebody's reviewing it going, oh, maybe if we put these numbers together, we can see trends or that. This is lifetime information. Some of the greatest benefits from doing this.
Great point, Terrance. I'm glad you brought up the iPass systems because these integrations, especially, for example, the integration with an ERP system, the iPass really allows those integrations to be created more cheaper and more easily than a lot of people have been used to integration projects in the past.
I don't like the word cheap. Let's do more cost effective.
More cost effective. Another benefit that comes up quite often is reduced review and release times.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, review is such a bane in the industry, right? It comes down to the cash flow. When you've got all these materials and all this built product pent up in a staging environment, right? You can't ship it. One of the largest things when I work with companies that I hear from their COOs or their shipping or their sales is we've got product and it can't ship. We're waiting on this element or waiting on that. Obviously, a digital system helps speed that up because now you're not looking at a stack of papers that you have to groom through. You can actually take it and go, show me what went wrong. Show me what went right. Show me the trend. Show it to me in a dashboard that really means something to me. And another interesting point going digital, especially if you bring your partners into the mix, is if you're using outside labs to do your testing, to do your final QC, which is one of the long-term shipment complaints. Imagine that being digital now. You're not worrying about transmitting paper documents via FedEx or trying to wait for that email. You've actually got that live time information and you can feed that to your clients, right? If your clients are time sensitive. Especially in COVID world, there's a whole lot of people awaiting a vaccine. There's a whole lot of people that were waiting, defibrillators to be made or whatever, respirators and other elements and masks and goggles and safety equipment. Being able to bring your client into those shipping, I love it when I can go onto FedEx or UPS and see that it's coming and, that's what digitization does. It brings live time information and removes those costly phone calls that you have to pick up from your sales team.
Right.
Where's this at?
Right.
The pizza delivery tracker, currently I'm working with a large healthcare provider and they actually call this feature the pizza tracker, right? And because it's modeling after, if you've ever logged on to Jimmy John's or whatever, they actually keep track of that, and the pizza guys themselves, like Papa Murphy's, you can actually see the stage at each one. It's baking, it's right.
Sure.
So,
yep.
yeah, so think of that from manufacturing realm. You can actually bring your clients and your partners into that information and reduce some of that transfer of information that's manual via phone call, email, right? It's all in one single place.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, when we're talking about review and release times, there are things that are automatically taken care of, like the signatures, the dates, so you're not worried about things that you have spent time on before, like looking for missing fields, tracking down signatures, making sure date formats are correct. So that's another element that's going to help with that. And then we also talk, this is something I've heard Terrance say many times, is allowing quality to do actual quality.
Right.
So really shifting the focus from people pushing paper, like I said, searching for someone because of a missing signature and correcting date formats, to doing things that actually improve the quality of the product itself. Okay, so when we're talking about the data that's going to be available using a digital system and using that for constant improvement, what is the data that we should look at collecting?
Well, we talked about the QC information a little bit ago, right? So when you're really looking for continual improvement, you're looking for those challenges, those points that are telling you if the process is running as it should, and being able to adapt if that information goes out of scale. We had a client that we were working with that had a product that had a half-life of 12 hours. And so what they were looking for is every time their equipment would go down, you have this point where now you have a ricochet throughout the supply chain where they can't deliver this critical medical component. And the interesting thing is that's exactly what they wanted to glean from a digital system. The parts are expensive, maintenance is expensive. We want to do it on our time. We want to do it on our dime, right? And so digital systems allow this to happen where you can start to predict how long a tool will wear or when a piece of equipment needs to go down that's optimal to not impact the supply chain, right? Digital system that's collecting all the information, whether it's all the way from QC checks through the information from setups and startups to end item inspections. All of that information needs to be in that digital realm so that you're also feeding back proper yields and elements into your risk all the way back into R&D for change control, right? If R&D has a part that is super tight tolerances and we want to be able to loosen that up, we can actually take lifetime manufacturing data with torque measurements to actually help adapt the process to be quicker and more efficient in manufacturing without sacrificing the needed efficacy and safety of the parts. Okay, so again, we went through quite a bit of stuff today. We have lots of partners. We're open whenever you want to have a great conversation about how to start that initial step, really taking you to that digital environment, because it is a perceived challenge and there are limitations to be able to do so, but we can overcome those and they're a lot smaller than they used to be years ago.
That's right. So thinking about starting the process can be a little overwhelming, as we've touched on, but it's really not as complex as you might think once you get going, and also whatever time that goes into the process is absolutely worth the investment because of all the benefits that we've already discussed.
Yes, exactly. And the benefits to the executives is, of course, better OKRs, better KPIs, right? Moving that needle of lower cost, higher quality, more shipping, right? That's really what we're after here, is improving the entire supply chain all the way through, including the batch record, which is a gigantic portion of this. And really it should be on the top of your list to look at for digitization, just because of the benefits you gain taking your manufacturing data and applying it to continuous improvement. Most manufacturing companies have continuous improvement departments. They have, mantras that they say, hey, we got to try and reduce cycle times, improve quality. Really a digital environment's the best way to get there. All right, thank you again, Katie, for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. Up next, we're going to be talking with Kim Jackson about some of the events that happen that affect manufacturing information and go into the quality management, CAPAs and corrective actions and supplier and different processes that we have to have in place that sit aside manufacturing. And again, we want to make sure that aren't siloed.